on that basis, I took my stuff off the ship and moved to California. I just felt that's what God wanted me to do. I prayed it and prayed it and prayed it. He intervened and stopped where I was planning and sent me in another direction. And the direction was, you're part of the result of that direction.
On behalf of tens of thousands of people, thank you for that decision.
So now you're in California, the new chapter. What happens next?
Well, like I said, I met Ralph Carmichael on an earlier Continental tour, and my goal was to hook up with him and get some of his music. But I came in 1966. I just finished my master's degree, and I didn't have any money. So I was substitute teaching in the morning, and then I had tried at Fuller Brush. So I was doing a Fuller Brush thing in the afternoon, and then in the evening, I would come home and write music. So I knew we were going to have a tour. And then I met with Ralph and talked to him, and he opened up his garage to me. And in his garage were all of these arrangements and music from the Billy Graham films that he had been writing. And he got a lot of good songs,
Yeah.
and nobody was using them. So I said to him, why don't we do this? I will introduce your music to the church, to the Continentals, and you help me get started. So he became our original board member. And then what was I doing? I was booking concerts in the spring of 67. We actually formed the Continental Corporation in spring of 67. I think it was in April. So now I'm getting the music prepared and I'm recruiting. I'm going to Zusa, going to Biola, holding auditions everywhere, recruiting some of the old Continentals from Portland. I had done some student teaching in the Portland area, and I recruited a couple of kids from that choir. Pretty soon I had 40. So I had enough to go. And we met in June, and we rehearsed at Bel Air Presbyterian Church up on the hill.
Yeah.
And my friend Fred Bach, who got me to California, was the music guy there. So he opened up the church, and actually that church housed us during our rehearsal camp.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, it was like an interesting start. It was very unprofessional, but hey, we were doing it. And so now it's June. I've rented a bus, and we all pile on the bus, get ready to go. We have like 60 concerts to do and an overseas trip coming up to the Caribbean. And I've still got 8 empty days. And you know, an empty day on a tour with 40 people is
Expensive.
disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got the motel, the food, now the restaurant, all that. But so every day on the bus, I was booking, and I would meet a new pastor at the night, and I would say, "Well, who do you know in St. Louis, or who do you know in Enid, Oklahoma, or who do you know in blah blah blah?" And that's how we finished that tour. We booked it all. It was a very successful first tour in '67, and in that group, I had a couple of strong assistant leaders, and I thought I'll make these guys directors and we'll expand. And so in 1968, we expanded to 3 tours. And Ken Wagoner, who had been with me and who had taken over the Portland Continentals, directed one. Steve Hilson, a young kid from Lansing, took the one to the Caribbean, and I went off to Asia for the summer. For 7 weeks, we were in Asia, all over these American Army and Air Force bases.
This is
Anyway, so when we came
during the
back,
Vietnam conflict, right?
exactly, I remember we were performing in Thailand on one of the big bases, and General Black was there. He eventually went to Washington, but we had this big black singer named, or African American singer named Bolden, Jim Bolden. And when he got up to sing, and when he was done, that general stood up, and the whole room stood up. So we got lots of standing ovations because whenever the general went up, everybody went up. Pretty funny. Anyway, so we had a great trip to all these different places, Japan, and we performed at the hospital in Japan when kids were waking up from having been shot in Vietnam,
Wow.
flown out to a ship, and then flown to the hospital in Japan and woke up while we were singing.
How was that? It must have been really emotional, I would think.
Horrible. It was really horrible, especially this one kid had no arms, no legs. He was just laying there, and he woke up while we were singing. So now we were really going. We came back from that tour in 68. I'd had 120 kids on the road and lots of new assistant directors on each one. And we started that fall the New Hope Singers, which was a rock group. I don't know if you remember the New Hope, but
Yeah.
there was like Monty Kelso was in one of those early groups, and it was like 6 to 8 singers, a rhythm section, and a brass group. You know, Jim, I'm thinking these last few days, I've been mulling about all of this, and I've realized, of course, I've always realized this, but I realized that nothing that we did, nothing happened that God didn't direct. It's like when I came to California, I had nothing but an idea. And when you got an idea and God is in the idea, it can't be stopped. And that's what we came up with this phrase, but if God's in it, you can't stop it. If he's not, you can't start it. And so that's what happened to us. It was like that. It was like this force that pushed us into one group, three groups, four groups, five groups in 70, 70, and on it went. And one of the early phrases, I'm thinking about, where did these phrases come from? I've been listening to all of your interviews
Yeah.
with these directors, and they're saying, I taught them that they had to do everything and nothing was impossible and all that. And I think, where did all that come from? One of the things, the very first things that I told the Continental group in Oregon was from a verse in the New Testament. It says, to whom much is given, much is required. And so, and nowadays I looked it up. It's in Luke. I'm got it here. Luke chapter 12. It says, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked.
Mm.
And so we really, my attitude was, I don't have a choice. I do not have a choice. I have to do this and I have to make it great. And so I would preach that to these amateur kids who were driving up, or flying in or whatever. And I would say, okay, you're good. Maybe you were the best one in Eden, Oklahoma, but here you're kind of part of the group. I want you to become great. It's your responsibility now to listen carefully, to work hard, to be a great performer. And so we pushed that in them from the very beginning. And that's where all this came from. That I remember saying to a kid in the very first tour, we were going back to Indiana way back, and we had the sponsorship was $75. That's all. And three kids couldn't make it. They couldn't make $75 to go. So I got in their face and I said, you can do anything you want if you want to bad enough. No, that's the phrase I used to motivate them, and they all got their money. And that phrase then has been going down through the history of Continentals forever.
Yeah.
So that what I taught you and what I taught the other ones was, I don't care what you're up against, you can handle it. You got 40 kids, they're your responsibility. You've got a great concert. This church has been expecting you, and it's going to be the best night they've had all summer. So you don't have a choice. So if there's an altar in the stage and you can't set your risers up, what are you going to do? Well, you could put them in the choir loft behind, but then they're too far away. Well, you could split them up. You got sopranos and altos over here and tenor. No, I don't want to do that. Well, you with the band here and the choir there, that's an option. Another option is you go down to the floor and you build a new stage out in front of the audience and move the chairs back a little bit. Whatever it takes, you have to do it. And so also came out of all of that thing, you can't miss a concert. Remember that? I used to tell you can't miss a concert.
Yeah.
So what do you do if your bus breaks down in the desert and you're stuck? How are you going to make the concert? I don't care how you make the concert.
Yeah.
You're going to make the concert. So all kind of things happen. I mean, a rental car with 4 kids who did the concert with the piano player, to the flatbed truck driving into the little town with all the kids sitting on the back of the truck, whatever it took
Yeah.
to get there or get some people there, we did it. And so we were doing hundreds of concerts, and the thought of all of it was growing and growing, growing. It was really fun. And so you were pushed. You were pushed, and I was pushed. We were made to believe truly that we had to do anything, but we also could.
Yeah.
We could make it work somehow. As the company grew and the leadership all developed, every one of these tours, you know, we were looking for new people constantly. And I think you came up with the phrase one time, and maybe I came up with it originally, but I said, you can have this person, will they follow? Will people follow them? I mean, they may be a good musician.
Right.
They may have everything together. The problem for the Continental director is they had to be a man or a woman for all seasons. I mean, you were a Bible teacher.
Yep.
During the day. You were a tour leader. You had to get someplace on time. You had to manage food. And then when you got there, you had to find dressing rooms and make it every appropriate. You
Yep.
had to clean up. You had to look at the auditorium and figure out where's the sound going, where's the lights going. And so many people did it wrong. I mean, I can remember funny things. I got to a concert one time with a new director, and the lights it was Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was a big church. And I walked in late because I flew in and I had a rental car, and the lights were in the wrong place and the sound was wrong. And I thought, oh no, this is terrible, because these people are not going to see or hear what we prepared for them.
Right.
And so I bit my tongue, and I found the pastor, and I said, he said, okay, if we start 20 minutes late tonight? He said, oh, sure. I said, well, you're going to have to watch something. So then I went and found the director and the assistants. They were in a prayer meeting, and there in the prayer time before the concert, I said, I'm sorry, everybody, but you got to come and reset your stage right in front of the audience. So they came out, and I told them where to put the speakers, how far back, where to put the lights, how to place everything. Then they had to focus the lights. I mean, 20 minutes late for sure. But that's how we learned.
Yep.
To do it right. I think the concept for me was, it was the little things that made you great. I mean, the average youth choir that you would see from a church, well, the kids were fussing with their face. They were looking over there where the guy was directing. So you got to focus. You can't do stuff. You got to, all the little stuff,
Yeah.
where you put the cords underneath the seats, where the spotlight goes, all this stuff became important, not because I'm this great big producer of productions, but because I wanted it to be great.
Yep.
I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to give those people an experience that they never had before. And so the Continental director then had this job of this setup, and then they had to be a conductor. They had to be an MC. They had to be a really good offering taker. They had to be a preacher. They had to give an invitation. They had to lead people to Christ. They had to teach all that. So, and they had to be a great liaison between the group and the church.
Yeah.
And the guy that got in the way most often was the custodian.
Have you ever wished you could gift your life-changing Continental experience to someone else? Well, you can. Your monthly giving can make a huge impact for our teams all over the world. Did you know that this year, we'll have more than 20 Continental groups on the road, communicating in 7 different languages? The Continental story goes on, so keep writing your part of it by being on our support team. And our groups will say, thank you, in 7 different languages.
All over the world, God's Spirit